So hello everybody, and thank you for attending the webinar today on Power BI. Just a few kind of housekeeping rules to start with. So all attendees will remain on mute for the whole webinar. If you do have any questions, then please use the question box and it will be answered after the demo. If we do run out of time or if the question requires a longer answer, then it will be answered offline directly. And please note that a link to view the webinar recording will be sent to you all after the demo. So I'd like to introduce the webinar. This is part of the Top 5 Things series that we have. This is the 11th in the series. You can sign up to one or you can sign up to all, and we do send emails out regularly, or you can have a look in our newsletter for upcoming webinars. So my name is Karen. I'll be facilitating the demo today, and I have been at TVision now for nearly 2 years. My background is software account management experience working for ERP companies. Ben is going to be doing the demo today, and he is a consultant here. He's been working at TVision for nearly 2 years as well, and he's been using NAV since 2013, having implemented NAV as a customer. Okay, so Power BI is part of Microsoft's suite of Power applications, which also include Power Apps and Flow. Using Power BI, you can create dashboards and data connections that give teams instant access to key performance indicators in an intuitive environment designed for secure collaboration. Power BI lets you to connect to NAV and Business Central in order to view performance, customers, sales, and finance metrics in a visual and interactive way. In this webinar, we will help answer the following questions using some Power BI report examples. So to start with, what is Power BI and is it right for me? Who are the reports for and why? How are you going to manage and prepare that data? What's the rollout and adoption plan, and how do I get started? So before the demo, I would actually like to launch a poll just to find out what you would potentially be requiring from a reporting system. It might not be that that's what it does now, but what would you like for the future? So I'm just going to launch. If you could put your answers in, that'd be brilliant. We'll wait a minute or so for everybody to put in their answers, and then I'll let you know the results afterwards. Okay, just going to wait for another couple of people to vote. Okay, so it's actually quite interesting. 75% of people have actually said that they would like all of the options there. So to remind you, the options were create real-time visual dashboards that you can drill into, ability to create your own reports with historic data. What I will do now is I'll hand over to Ben for the demo. Please do remember to use the question box if you do wish to answer a question, and it will be answered after the demo.
Thanks, Karen. So just before I start, I've pre-recorded this just so that I could demo quite a few things rather than you have to watch me doing bits and pieces. So it's broken down to sort of short snippets, which I'll be speaking over. But it was all me that did it, and hopefully what you'll see is it's intuitive and relatively simple to get started on things. So here we go. So first of all, we're going to have a look at how to get data into Power BI. So we're using Power BI Desktop here, which is freely downloadable. If you just search for Power BI and go to the link, then you can do that. So here we are looking at the data, and I'm just going to show you all the data types that Power BI can import. So clearly, Azure is big for Microsoft at the moment, and what you'll hopefully see there is Dynamics 365 Business Central, both on-premise and cloud, so software as a service, and Dynamics NAV. So they're all standard connectors that are in there. How they actually work is it's through OData, so through web services. So we can create queries or pages that we can publish as OData services that can then be consumed by Power BI as data sources. For today, though, what I'm going to use is I'm actually just going to use a SQL database. So it's a freely downloadable one that Microsoft provide. So just as an example now, what I'm going to show you today is not going to be anything different from what you could do with Nav. If you had a direct connection to that through web services, it's just for the purposes of this. It gives me a much more stable and consistent way to be able to demo it. So as you can see, there's various types of connecting. I'm going to import this data, but you can do a direct query for certain things. Now, one of the things you do need here, just as I find the data that I want, so at the moment what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring up a sales table. So it's fact internet sales. As I said, it's demo data provided by Microsoft. So I can just have a quick preview of that data and see all the information that's in there. Not too concerned about what's in there, but I can also then edit stuff as well. But for this purposes, I'm just going to load it straight in. And it will take just a second as it brings that data into the model. So then what I have on the right here is I've got fields, which are all the data from the table which I brought in, and then visualizations. So the visualizations is really being able to interact with it. So you can see here as I go up and down the fields, all the different types. Now, what you will need, you need to know sort of what the data is in there. So this is quite a well-structured data source. So I'm just going to take the order date into there. And what you'll see is that Power BI has already taken what is a date range and converted it into a set of hierarchies. So you've got the year, the quarter, the month, and the day. So I don't need to do anything with that. And then I'm going to take the sales amount. So the sales amount is per transaction here. And the little sign, as you can see next to it, that actually shows you that it's going to sum it up. So this is all raw data at the moment. And I've just created a nice chart to split those sales by year. I've got 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, etc. So just some of the options just to tidy up this a bit. So I'm just going to change the axes and make it categorical so that I get every single year in there. And then some of the other bits and pieces you can do as well. So I've got all the data, all the colors, sorry, that I can change. And you can do quite a lot on these in terms of wanting to sort of make these visually appealing. So you've got being able to base the color scheme based on values within there. I'm not going to do that in this sense, but you can do it based on other information as well. So it doesn't have to be directly on the thing which you're putting in as a measure. And you can see here, I can also manually color these if I want to. So if I want a particular year to be red, another one to be yellow, example. But I'm just going to, after I've done this, is just reset it back. Now that change that I made in that is specific to that visualization there. So unfortunately it doesn't carry over. But this is where we can start to have a look at what we can do. So I'm starting to drill into the data here. So as I click on the year and click on the quarter, it's taking me into the month data. I've not got a full year of data, and then into the actual day. So that's following the hierarchy that it's automatically created based on the order date. And this is just showing me the sales per day then. And I can navigate back up to get to the detail that I want. But then actually what I can do is then make that hierarchy shared so that you can see the years and the quarters. And here again, I can then manipulate some of the filtering on here. So in this case, I'm just going to put a filter in on a year just to restrict some of the data down. And the reporting filtering, this can be done on various levels. So in this case, I'm just doing it on this visualization, but you can do it for a whole report if you want. So if you wanted it to just be for a specific year, you can do that as well. So we're just going to go on to the next one now. And what we're going to have a look at here is bringing in some additional data. So just starting off, I've got quite a raw set of data in here. And this is quite typical of a sales transaction table. And if I just have a look at the product key, so it's automatically tried to create a graph there for me, but I'm just going to change that to a table. It's just done a count of the number of product keys that I've got in there. Now that's not that useful as a field because it's just going to be a number which represents the product. So if I want any more product data, then I haven't got it in this table at the moment. And this is where you are then sort of looking at building up a data set. So what I'm going to do is just bring in some additional data so I can get some context in there. So I'm just going to go into my managed data source, and this is using Power Query, which comes as part of it. Just going to reopen up that connection and then have a hunt in the table list for the one which I want. So again, I'm just seeing that. I'm just going to bring in the customer because I'll need that a bit later, and the product, and then some categorization on the products as well. And again, I can preview this data in here. If I want to, I can also edit it, but I don't need to in this case. So I'm just going to bring that in, and again, gives me the option as to how I want to do that. So I'm just going to import it in this instance. And you can see there it's loaded that up, and it's loaded up a preview of the data. So now here's my customer table. So, this is looking at the raw data. So it's not very exciting, but it's all about data preparation quite commonly. And quite often you will need to manipulate some of that data. So in this case, I've got gender, which is M or F. And actually what I want to do is transform it. So rather than saying M, I actually want it to say male or female. And again, it's all designed around ease of use. So I'm just going to use replace values on here by right clicking. And very simple and intuitive. I'm going to find an M, and I'm going to replace it with the actual text that I want. And that's done that. And what you see is over on the right in the applied steps, it's added in the step that I've done. And you can see at the top there, the actual code that it's written, which you didn't have to write. I didn't write that. I just used a tool to be able to do that. And I'm going to do the same with female. If I can spell it right. Hit OK, and it's replaced that as well. Another thing, I'm just going to get rid of the email address because it's not important for what I need. So I can just remove that data. So again, you can tidy up your data source within Power BI itself as part of your data preparation. So for this instance, I'm just going to remove that one. But it's always best practice to try and remove data where it's not going to be used. Just going to close that, and that's going to load this data into the data model, which will just take a few seconds to do that. And obviously one thing to bear in mind is if you are importing a lot of data, you may want to, for the purposes of designing it or building it, is actually restrict the amount that you bring in. So you probably don't want to bring in 10 years worth of data for building a report. You probably want to bring in a year, and then once you're happy with it, is expand that out. So now I've brought in the data, and we'll just have a quick look at that. So within the sort of Power BI workspace itself, I can have a look at some of the information. So here's all my customer information. So I've got the first name in there. Actually, maybe I don't want that. I'm not interested in names. So again, within the client, I can delete that and do some things to it. Now, the important thing, though, to be able to build a really good data model is having relationships. And because this is a well-prepared set of data, Power BI has actually identified those relationships. And you can see there it's done on the same name. So product category key in one table is product category key in another one. So it's quite obvious which one it is. So if it's got an obvious link like that, it's going to try and create that link for you. And we can just see how you could do it through a user interface as well as just selecting the ones that you want. It's done it all for me though, and it's created all those connections for me automatically. I've not had to do anything, but as I said, this is well prepared data as it's demo data. So you can see here the link from those sales to the customer. So I'm just going to go back and I'm going to have a look at my products now. And what I want to do is be able to bring in some detail. So I'm going to add in the English description into that table. And okay, that's not quite the right one that I wanted, so that's a full text description. So I'm just going to put in the product name instead. Clear that, and now I've got the product name. I'm just going to find the item number as well. So the product key, drag that in, and you can see here it's done a count here. So I just need to change that and not summarize it because I don't need to summarize this. I want the actual value. So what's the point of that? Well, actually, this is where you can start to interact with the report. So as I start to drill into it, you should see that on the right, some of the data is going to change. So I'm just going to add in some more data just so we can see that. So I'm going to go back to my sales data, and I'm going to put sales amount into this table. Now, because the relationship's there, I can actually join data between these two tables very easily. So it's just a case of dragging and dropping, but it obviously requires that relationship to be there. So now as I drill into the data, what you should see is that the item list is going to change and the sales amounts are going to change as well. So Q3 here, and you can see that it's now got a different sales amount, different values. Now actually, I want to be able to do some other bits on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort this. So I'm just going to sort that by descending. And that's created a sort order for me. So again, as I start to navigate through it, you should see it's all changing. Now I just want to tidy that up a bit as well, because you can see there's some that have gone to multiple decimals. So that one with sort of halfway down 362, the mountain bike, I've got loads of decimals. So actually I'm just going to go to the modeling. Again, very simple. how do I want this data to be? Well, I'm just going to put it a whole number so I get some consistency. It's going to give me a little warning because it's actually going to change the data that's imported. Click OK on that. And now it's gone nicely to no decimal places. So it's just a whole number. So it just makes it a lot easier to visualize. And you don't then have to worry about necessarily how that data has actually been brought in. You can change it within the model to make it the data that you need. Now, I'm just going to change this visual as well. So it was a table before. I want to make this into a matrix, and I'm just going to start putting in some other bits. So again, what I want to do is I just want to be able to have a look at this over years. Now, again, when I start filtering, what you'll see is I filter on 2013 on the graph, and my table changes. Perhaps what I want to do now is just actually have some more detail in there. So I want quarters as well. So again, now if I click on that, I'm actually going to get the quarterly breakdown for that year. So as you interact with one part of the visual, what actually happens on the rest of it is that it's going to update, which is really great for being able to explore data and try and understand what's driving data. So you can use something graphical on the left, for example, and then actually get down to detailed level on a table or something like that on the right. So now I'm just going to go on to my next slide. So what you should see here is it's changed slightly. So I spent a bit of time and just built a quick report. So we'll go through this and have a quick look at this. So this didn't take me particularly long time to build. These are all sort of pre-canned visualizations. So what we're going to look at now is just some of the bits and pieces on here. That should just start, yep. So I've got a bar chart. So these are all the visualizations. So you can see I've got some filters up here. So what I've done, I've taken a slicer. So that's a way to filter the data. I've just done some formatting on there. So for example, I've made it so that I've got some coloring and some orientation. So I've made it into buttons by selecting it as being horizontal. I've got an order month. Now I've just done something in here just to make that data easier. So there's a little calculated column in there, which isn't hard to do actually, and I'll just show you this. So I'm just going to put in a new column here. It's going to take a second just to load that up. And what you'll see is I've got a new column in the formula bar at the top now. I can enter in some stuff. So I'm going to put in an order month name and just equals, and then it's IntelliSense. So as I start typing, I can pick which date. So I want the order date, and then of that, I actually want the month. Just hit enter. So I've not had to really understand an awful lot about this. I've been able to just quickly go into that and just type that in, and it's helped me to do that. And now if I just look at the actual raw data in here, go to that, and I'm just going to scroll over. You can have a look, and it's put in the order month name for me. So now I can have a nicely displayed order month name in there if I so wish. I'm going to leave that on the dates, on the actual numbers. So then just some other bits as well. I'm just going to have a look at my customers and the geography. And you can see I've got a country filter in there. So I'm just using some country filters to be able to display stuff. And then obviously I've got a map. So if you want a map, it's useful to have some filtering and some countries on here. So what I've done here is I've taken the country, so that's a country code, and a city, and just changing the filter there. So actually I'm just looking at the country itself, adding in another level. So now I've got the country and the city, so Australia and Perth, for example. There's various types of maps available. So I've just added in another one here. And again, I can add in data from two tables here. So I can add in the product category and the subcategory, and then interact with that and drill down into it if you want. But actually, I'm just going to leave in the product subcategory for this. And the matrix, which I showed you an example of earlier, I've just built a slightly tidier one of that. And you can see there I've got the category, subcategory, and product's name, just showing the category and subcategory here. And I can drill up to get to various levels, or drill down and split those out, which is what I've done here. And put the date across the top, and I'm just interested in years and the sales amount. And actually I've done some nice quick graphical representation using some conditional formatting. And again, this is all simple to do, just to be able to visualize that data in a nicer way. And I could do it by color on the font. I could do it by background color. I've chosen data bars in this example. And there's lots of controls over how you want to do that as well. So what's the point of doing all this? Well, it's when we start using these filters on the left that we start to get more interaction. So you can see, let's start filtering. That's applied a filter across all the data and across all of my visualizations to show me what's in there. So my everything's updated based on that. So actually, if I wanted to compare, say, what were the sales in December across different years, well, I've left the year filter blank, just filtered on the month it's 12, so you can see differences in the sales. So 2013 was obviously a bumper year for December. And again, see the differences by product categories. And perhaps I'm then interested in just looking at the US. So you can see actually the map's now zoomed in. And if I look at this in Lakewood, I can see what the sales amount was, and I can drill further into that. So I can drill across things as well. So I can drill on some of the filters and then the map and then get some graphical representation. So you can see that probably not that clear, but the charts are all updating to be that particular value which I filtered on. And as you can see, a lot of that's been done without any code as well. So not a lot that I'd have to do. So this is where it becomes really powerful for exploring data. So rather than having kind of like a set of numbers which you've got to look at, actually it's all very visual. So you don't need to pull through a spreadsheet and have a look at things to be able to do that. You can get a really visual representation of things. So it really helps you to kind of get the data out. So now I'm just going to have a look at some of the other things that are in here. So you can see here the sales amount. It's actually done some nice data. It's done a nice measure for me. It's summed it up. But then I might want to do some comparatives. And this is where there's some help and guidance in here. So I'm doing quick measures, just right clicks on it. And there's loads and loads of types you can do in here, but I'm just going to pick one to do it automatically. So I'm going to do year-over-year change. So what do I want to look at? What's the sales amount again? And I need the date. So I'm just going to find the date that I want. I'm using order date here. Going to add that in, and then this is automatically going to generate some code for me. So again, yep, you can write this code if you know how to, but actually it helps you to do it for you. And we'll see once it's just done that for us. Got a new one, sales amount year over year, and it's actually written that formula. So I've not written that formula. I've just used an inbuilt function that's created a formula for me. Don't need to worry too much about what it's doing, but essentially that is a way to get a year-on-year comparison. Okay, so very low code. I've just done that. Took me a few clicks of a mouse. I want to start using that now. So actually, I'm going to put that into my matrix view. So let's have a look at the sales amount year-on-year and see the variance. And that's done it for me. So if I just scroll over here, if I'm having a look at the bikes ones, we can see we're massively up between 2010 and 11. Just going to go up a category to sort of clean it up a little bit. They can see that actually between 2011 and 2012, we lost 17.46% of sales. So actually really good, useful insight very quickly without actually having to write any code here. And as we saw, there's absolutely loads of them in there to help you with that. Now, the other useful thing is there's tooltips. So I can hover over this and it's going to give me some sales amounts, but maybe I actually want some more contextual information. So I'm just going to put in the year-on-year calculation. Then when I hover over it now, we can see it's actually bringing in that. So you can add as many of these in as you want. So the bubbles in that are going to be one particular size, but the data on there is going to be based on the calculation that's in there. And again, this works as you start to filter down. So when I look at 2013, it's only showing me the sales for 2013 in there. If I drill down into it, all the graphics, all the visualizations on the screen are going to filter down to that value as well. So a great way to be able to explore all the data which is in there. So that's great. So at the moment, what we've done is we've put everything into a Power BI desktop report. But the real power of Power BI is the fact that it's a service. So it's a software as a service, or not even software as a service, but a platform as a service provided by Microsoft. Currently it's £7.50 per user per month. So the desktop version, which is what I've been showing you, there's no cost to that. So it's a great way to download that for free, connect it to a data source that you want, and then be able to do some stuff. But really, it's when you want to share reports that you need to have a license and be able to publish that. So I'm just going to quickly walk through that. So you can see I'm signed in with my credentials there. And I'm just going to hit the publish button. It's going to force me to save it. Always sensible. and then it's just going to do that for me in the background. So what this is actually doing is loading my report that I've created. I'm just going to put it into my workspace. You can see I've got some other ones that I've prepared previously in there, and it's just going to spend a minute or so publishing that up there. Now what it's doing is it's putting the structure of the report up there, so all the visualizations and things like that, but the data will need to be refreshed separately. So if you've got a large data set, it's not going to publish it and then do it. So that's great. That's now uploaded that. So it just took a minute or so. I'm just going to jump onto the next one now, where I've jumped into the actual website. So you can see I'm at the app.powerbi.com. Logged in as me, and my report, which I've called webinar, funnily enough, is there. So we're just going to have a quick look at that in the client. So what I've got data sets. So that's the raw data. You can see when it was last refreshed there. And I've got some options around what I want to do with that. I've got the workbook, don't have any of those. And then I've got the report. So the report is what I was working on there. And you can see all the options I've got in here. So what I want to do, analyze in Excel, quick insights and things like that. Related reports, which open that up. And what you should see is that what I had just done and published is now on the website. So again, it's all through Active Directory, and I get the same controls. So what I'm actually going to do as well is just create a dashboard, because this is where it's great to be able to highlight some of these things and surface them. So you've got the report, and you can have multiple reports, but then I've got dashboards. And maybe actually with this dashboard, I want it to be nice on a phone, so I can design it into on a phone, so that if I'm on the go, I can access this. So it really is any data anywhere, really. So here you can see I'm just going to quickly drag it around, and you can have lots of tiles on that. So just a quick look at that. Go back to the web view, and this is the dashboard. Now think of this is a very simple example, but you might have lots of KPIs, and actually that could be shared across many reports. So one dashboard could contain data or pinned data from lots of reports. So think about it, your KPIs are really important things that you want to be able to do. And the idea of these is that it gives you the key information at a glance, but then you can go into that and look at the underlying data behind that. So just click on that. And actually what I've done is I've gone into my report. So your users don't necessarily have to know how to navigate the report. They can navigate from their dashboard and be taken to the report. So again, it's straight back into that, straight back into the same data as we saw earlier. Loads of power here as well. So the other things is once it's up in the cloud, then I can do some neat stuff using machine learning and things like that. So I'm just going to do some insights. So view the insights, and what it's done, it's just iterated through that and tried to surface some information. Now I can't say at the moment whether or not any of this information is any good. I haven't looked at it in any detail, but okay. So the sales, lots of stuff around the pricing. So trying to create, I understand where patterns might be. So whether there's correlation, things like that. So you can see here, if it's 20 to 100 or under 10, then actually it seems to have more promotion. So actually that could be useful, but bear in mind it's any data that you've put in there. So if you've got a particular way of categorizing your customers or your jobs or your sales or your items or anything like that, actually all of those are available and they'll be part of the analysis that would get done automatically. So again, you can just look at the quick insights, and I can actually get to that from the report as well. A bit quicker this time. It just takes a couple of minutes to run that usually in the background. Now, really, the important thing is actually we want to be able to share that data. So it's all well and good me being able to access this, but actually other people in my organization need to be able to hold on to that. So I'm just going to quickly share that. And so I'm just going to find Karen in here. So Karen's just been entered there, and I'm not going to put in a message for her. I can just hit the share button in a second, and then that's going to do that. See who's got access to it. So actually, if I come to share it, I'm just going to share that now. And Karen will have got an email, which means that she can log in. She needs to have a license, so she's not got an assigned license. She won't be able to access it, but again, I can change the permissions, so change her so she can read it only, so she can only get the data. And then manage permissions easily. So it's easy to sort of remove people, change things about and stuff like that. But again, that relies on a person being an owner or an admin on this. But very simple then to be able to share data. So I'm aware that we are running slightly over time now, so I'm just going to skip this next one, which was going to be about the phone layout. So just touching a bit more on the detail of what we showed you earlier in terms of the phone layout. But again, if people are interested in that, then please reach out to us by email and we can look at some of those things. But just obviously aware of everybody's time. So just going to pass some stuff back to Karen quickly.
Great. Thanks very much, Ben. So I'm going to open it up to some questions now. Please do use question box if you have any. So we have one here. With the map visualization, can you drill down to postcode location to get a view down to street level?
Yes, you can. And again, it uses Bing Maps. So it uses the Bing Maps API. So yes, is the simple answer to that. There are usually some funnies around it. So if your postcode data is not very good, you're going to have a problem, and you probably want to look at how you are restricting it. So sometimes you get postcodes that could be international. So you might have a postcode that actually exists in more than one country, and sometimes it will pick the wrong country for you. So it just becomes something like restricting it to UK only addresses or something like that. But yeah, you can get down to whatever level you want to be able to do it at.
Okay, so it says another question, how long would it take for a user to become proficient in using Power BI?
It's a good question. I guess it depends on how you define proficient. So the stuff that I showed you, that was all sort of done in real time. Okay, I pre-recorded it, but I knew where to look. There's loads of resources online. So actually, if you go to the Power BI website, there's loads of guided learning on that. And I think actually creating this sort of simple data model, so the information I was showing you on there was sort of sales amount, and it's automatically summed that up, is a formula language which is called DAX. So learning that takes time and investment. But actually, if you've got kind of like relatively simple sales reports, so I want to know how much I've sold, I want to know what the cost was, and this doesn't have to be products, it could be jobs, time, anything like that, or even general ledger entries, summing those up. Then it will do most of the hard work for you. It's only really when you start getting more complex, which you need to invest some time. But as I said, there's loads of guided learning and help on the Power BI website, and great forum as well for support.
Another one here is, how do you auto refresh the data?
So once you've published it into the cloud, so into the service, it depends on how you're connecting. So if it's like an OData connection, then you just set the refresh frequency on that and provide the credentials. Typically, you're going to refresh overnight, so daily. If it's an on-premise SQL database, then you need to install something called the Power BI Gateway. And then that sits on your server and acts as the bridge between your on-premise server and the service. So basically the data goes through that. And again, it's just a case of then setting that up, and setting that up is really very easy. There's obviously permissions and stuff like that, so it's an administrative task to do. And then once it's published to the cloud, that's when the owner of that report or the administrator of it can set a refresh frequency. Power BI is a shared service. So if you're building huge data sets and you're a big enterprise, you can buy reserved space basically, so processing power. But if you're talking about loads and loads of data, then there are some quirks around what you may need to look at with that. So it tends to be then that you're going to have to, you want a cube, which is going to be an on-premise data source, or perhaps in Azure, which you're using Power BI on as a front end. Then it just depends on the data, but we can help and advise on that. If you want to explore that further.
Okay, just one more. Does TVision offer to create reports as a service?
Yes, we do. So we'll work in partnership with clients to understand it's what do you want out of it, and really that question is one of the key ones at the outset. And there's various aspects to it. One is understanding the data source. So where are we going to get the data from? So it can be web services. If you've got a NAV on-premise version, actually it's probably best to do it through SQL. Understanding how much data, because that might be some of the sort of infrastructure that's needed. If they're not talking about huge data sets, I appreciate it doesn't give you a definitive figure, then actually you can connect directly quite easily. And then the building of the reports, creating all the measures and things like that, we do as a service. So there's data preparation, getting the data, which we usually do, and perhaps in partnership with you as well. And that's understanding what you want to get out of it, and then actually building the report. But actually, once we've built a report, we can hand that over to you, provide some training, and then you can change the report, because it's all graphical, it's all just drag and drop essentially. And once you've got a good data set and good measures in there, actually for you to be able to use them and change how things look, it's quite self-service at that. You then typically would come to us to say, actually, we've got this new metric, this new thing we want to measure. So that's what we typically do that. But yeah, absolutely, we do that as a service. We'd love to help people.
Okay, thanks, Ben. That's great. There were another couple of questions we don't have time for, but we will answer them directly afterwards. So I'd like to leave you with the 5 key takeaways about Power BI, which we'll hope will assist you. So Power BI will change the way that you see reporting. It's all about creating data sets for people to explore, looking at the information that's important to them. It will take a mind shift away from static reports that are specifically requested. As a result, finance and IT departments can be freed up from needing to create ad hoc and schedule reports for other departments and management. If you're already using Office 365, then all you need to, in order to create powerful dashboards, is a Power BI license subscription. However, whilst this is a low cost of entry, creating these dashboards does require a higher level of skill than those who may currently be creating your static reports. So it's worth investigating what skill gaps you may have, and if you can get the training. So once you've decided that Power BI is right for your company, you need to have a rollout strategy. Whilst it may be tempting to advertise Power BI across the business straight away, you may end up being asked for many dashboards all at once. So start with the ones that include your most important business KPIs and the one which you can achieve the quickest actionable insight, and then plan for the next phase. Once people who view the dashboards have had some basic training, they can explore the data as they wish, drilling down into the key areas for them. The solution is very intuitive, and it's important that as new dashboards are published, you notify the relevant people and encourage continued use. And finally, it's important to remember that data is key. You do need to be confident that the data you have in NAV or Business Central is clean and correct. If not, then people who view the dashboards may very quickly tell you that the data is wrong, and that may blame Power BI, thus reducing the uptake in usage. Okay, so we hope that you found this webinar interesting and informative. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is the 11th in the series. It's continued from last year, but we do have a schedule for this year. This is on our website, so please have a look at the ones you might want to register for. Okay, so I'm going to close the session now, and a survey will appear. It'd be great if you could respond with some feedback. So as I mentioned, the questions that we couldn't have time to answer, we'll answer directly. But if you do think of anything else that you want to ask us about Power BI after the webinar, feel free to email me at marketing@tvision.co.uk. Thank you very much.
Thank you.